Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Hi, everybody. We're
Ah,
back. I don't know if anybody's there, but I can. I hope there's people here. Just let us know if you're here. Oh, there's a few people. Thank goodness. Apologies. I have no idea what's going on. Um, so uh, we have missed the preliminary. I'm not going to go through that again. But anyway, just a big welcome to James. And listen, thank you so much for your patience. Um, in hanging in there until I could get back in again. So, James, you're in Paris. So, and I know you're not French because you're from the US, but I suppose, how did you get to? I suppose there's lots of questions I want to ask you, but how did you get to Paris from the US?
uh, well, we'll have to go back to 1986 to start this journey. I work for a fashion designer, and I moved here. I've been with him for 15 years, and I moved to Paris 5 years ago during the height of the COVID lockdowns and the grim beginnings of Brexit, and it was time for me to ship up and ship out. So I came here, and now I've been here for 5 years, diligently working away and surviving and trying my absolute damnedest to love Paris. And despite it being a city that I've never been very fond of, but I have to say that it's much nicer to live here uh, than to visit, which I did not expect. So that's something, huh?
What's the? So did you come from England because of Brexit, or did you come from the US? I mean, directly.
I came from England. I left. I was to give you the full rundown. I was born in Ohio. I was raised in New Mexico and Florida, and then I moved to Sweden to study music, and then I moved to New York for 11 years. And then I moved to London, and then I moved to Turin, Italy, and then I moved back to London, and then I moved to Paris. So I've been around the block and back,
And what's the difference between visiting? I mean, I've never been to Paris, would you believe? So I've neither been a visitor nor a liver there. What's the difference
which is
between living and
criminal, by the way.
I, for you?
But
One day.
we're gonna remedy that as soon as possible. Uh, the difference between what now Paris and the rest of the
I
continent,
mean,
or
you say it's nicer to live there than visit. So what's the difference?
it's when you visit. I mean, admittedly, when I've been here visiting, it's always been for work. So I come for 4 fashion shows a year, and I see one piece of the city, and generally that piece of the city I see from inside of a building uh, for 12 to 15 hours a day, and then I go to eat whatever I can find that's still open, and then I go to sleep in my hotel and I start over. So, and then if you have a day off, you kind of cram yourself around all of the general places that you would go when you're in Paris for 24 hours. But living here, you find there's the place to buy your cheese. You find the bookstores that you like. You find it. It takes a long time to figure out which museums are best and which places speak to you. And so living here, it just it takes some time, but you figure it out. And it also has given me more appreciation for Parisians over the years who were not necessarily my go-to group for comfort. But now the longer you're anywhere, the longer you're with people, the more sort of natural all of your prejudices, your ideas about whoever you're thinking, they fade away automatically, naturally. And I think that I learned a lot about the walls that I had held up, how I was projecting my perceived Parisianness onto Parisians that they didn't hold themselves. So living here uh, is better specifically for me because I realized I was an asshole, and I was able to check myself a little bit and get to know Parisians, and also learning the language helped a lot in terms of um, being able to know people on a level that's a little more real Hi, how are you?
Ah, okay. So interesting. So, as a druid, I mean, what's it like being a druid in Paris?
Uh, Tough, honestly. Tough if you're not like I am, very comfortable with being inside yourself, inside your nest, because the city itself, nature is very manipulated. So the gardens in Paris are very, don't walk on the grass. Nature is for viewing from a side. You're not in it. We have two forests, the Bois de Vincennes and the Bois de Boulogne, and both of them, um, Bois de Vincennes, I think, is a little more wild, so you can kind of lose yourself in there. Bois de Boulogne, no matter where you're standing, you still can see a skyscraper peeking over the furthest tree. So it's a little bit tough to lose yourself. And I think that in a city that is so rooted in humanism and philosophy and very much a material side of life, it can be spirituality is almost taboo to a degree, and extremely personal, and you don't. It's not really a conversational piece, so it can be difficult to connect. And then the religion that's predominant that you see everywhere is Catholicism. And
Mhm.
interestingly, to connect yourself to something bigger and deeper, it's the churches, the medieval constructions with these beautiful art, and you can go in when there's not a mass being said and sit there and feel, um, at least like you've left the streets,
Left the
and
mundane world in some way. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And then there's the incense and the scent of petrichor and moss that kind of disconnects you from this plane. But it does feel a bit strange as a druid to be sitting in a Catholic church, to find my natural roots. But it's a beautiful city. The art that's in the churches is phenomenal. The history behind them being, I love history, so being in places that I know, Saint Germain sat himself. It's nice because what is uh, what is our connection to the earth without connection to our ancestors and connection
Mhm.
to our history? And in that way, you can always feel part of something that's bigger than yourself, part of a time that isn't necessarily linear. And in that way, it's magical. In terms of finding a forest to lose yourself in and enjoy the serenity of nature, wrong city. But it has its charms.
It's interesting that how I found Obod was this book jumped out at me in a bookshop, and it was Cassandra Eason's book, The Modern Day Druidess. And I really liked her book because it was very pragmatic. And she said uh, that you can create your own grove in an apartment in a city.
Mm,
Have a few pot plants and you can create it. And then, of course, she mentioned Obod at the back of the book, so I joined. And of course, so much of our work is our inner world and finding our own inner growth, even in a busy city. And it's interesting that you find some time out from the mundane in these wonderful churches.
mm. I think here it's almost child's play compared to where I grew up, because I grew up sort of in a swamp, and the idea of a connection to the natural world or to a Celtic deity was so far away from my reality growing up that I was able to invent, close myself in. I could out back, where I lived, there were alligators, and you kind of close your mind off to it and think, somewhere out there, somewhere, is a connection that I'm looking for. Somewhere I can bring all of this in. It's a lot of, I think that for me, uh, druidry, anything that I've been connected to spiritually has always been so rooted in symbolism and metaphor that I think that I can take it to some pretty extreme levels of what I can find. out of growing up near Disney World, and setting up a little altar in my middle school bedroom to whomever I'd like to speak to who wasn't Mickey Mouse. And I think that if you're able to do it, I think a lot of I sometimes in Paris I'll go to a Buddhist temple that's absolutely phenomenally beautiful, built in the Tibetan architecture, I think in the 60s. And the teachings there are so incredible because it's so rooted in the cliche idea, wherever you go, there you are. You really, if I'm here, if I'm with you in Ireland, if I'm in Sweden, in the middle of a city or on the top of a mountain, I'm the same person with the same connection to the world around me and to the world beyond it, no matter where I'm standing. And I think as somebody who's moved around a lot, and being connected to land feels eventually a lot less specific, because there's no land that I've been on for more than 2 years at a time, moving from place to place, from country to country, switching around continents. And eventually you kind of, the world somehow becomes bigger and smaller. Bigger in that it's all one land, it's all one earth, it's all we're all, every place that I've been, every people that I've lived around and connected to, we're all the same, stardust, connected to the same thing, held together by the same force. And it's the same with the soil underneath us. So in that way, your terrain becomes so much bigger. In another way, it becomes or much smaller, and at the same time, because you really have to plant yourself to feel like you are somewhere. I don't know how to articulate this, but it's I don't fly, and it's part of my charm. It's part of my allure, but it's also sort of part of my spiritual practice, is that if I'm going someplace, I always take trains and buses, or when I'm coming to Ireland, I take 2 trains and a boat to get there, because there's something, when you move around a lot, I think it's really comforting to be attached to the earth, or the sea, or you see the changes in the landscape as you're going by. You feel like the voyage is taking you somewhere, not that I get into a metal box and I'm teleported and then I'm in another airport where all rules of social universe, social order vanish as soon as you're in an airport, and it's everybody's first day on earth. So avoiding that and taking this time, you get to feel more involved, maybe. Yeah, something to that effect.
It's interesting because there's lots of things going on in my head. I love living where I live, and this is where my roots are, even though I travel a lot. But I always want to come back here. And I haven't got that same facility. Like Howard, my husband, could find, well, he's a European. He could live places, put down roots. And I'm sure I can do as well, but I don't want to. But I'm really intrigued with your non-flying and how you keep that connection with the earth. And it's really interesting because so many spiritual parts, or particularly, we'll say, Christianity's all up the sky, and that's where heaven is, etc. And that the earth is only a transitory place, where with Druids, the earth is really, really important, and the importance of being grounded. And I'm just intrigued with you keeping that connection as you travel from place to place, that it's the train, the bus, the well, indirectly the bottom of the sea, but it's like you haven't left the earth, and you still keep that connection with it that keeps you really, really grounded. Liz is from the US. She said a lot of churches were built on top of ancient pagan sites. Have you ever done any connection with these since you've been in Paris?
Slightly. The Paris is a very interesting place, because you when you're in the UK, for example, or Ireland, it's very obvious when you're in a place that was another place, or when you're in Rome, that it's like a layer cake, that you have a temple to Mithras at the bottom, and gradually you see the religious conquerings and dominance in the dirt. I mean, you see it built on top of each other. Paris is really, France as a as a nation, after the Frankish kings and everybody that succeeded I think the Merovingians were the last pagan dynasty in France, which I could very well be wrong about, but they were the long-haired kings, and their symbol was a bee, and a lot of that still, a lot of the bee symbolism still exists here. So you see it more in cultural things and actual buildings. And as far as where the pagan sites of worship were in Paris, it's not that I've been able to find. I'm sure someone knows, but it's really, I don't know. I think that I lived in London for a long time, and they're very clear about it, and it's they'll even mention it in the church. This has been this and this and this, and I find that in France it's more of oh no, we're far too civilized to have ever had a pagan past, because now the language itself, everything has been very, very Christianized. So it's for such a long time that that it's difficult to know exactly. The more in France, you see things outside of Paris a lot more. So in Paris is the New York City of France. Where is it France? You don't really know. It has its own laws, its own rules, its own form of civilization, and then you leave and people are radically different, and you feel regional differences from region to region as you go around. In Normandy, for example, you feel that there's this Scandinavian air, and you can feel it in the land a little bit differently. You can feel what was sacred, and you can kind of guess, but again, it's a guess because it's really wiped out, because the first ordained kings that were Scandinavian of Normandy were also Christianized from the get-go. So yes and no. But I have seen, I mean, there's a rumor that there's a druid, and I don't think they're Obod, but in Paris on certain holidays they'll go to the Seine and they'll make offerings, and they must know where to go. I've never seen them, but I've read snippets on the internet. I just have no clue how to find them. But if I do, I'll come back here and tell all of you what I found. Yeah, but for now, that was a very long way of saying I have absolutely no clue, Liz, and I'm very sorry.
Oh, a lovely long answer.
I've tried.
Now, so I know you're moving to Normandy, and Burke is a Norman name, and Kilkenny, where I live, is a Norman town, a Norman city. So the Normans came, there was a Norman invasion of Britain, and then they came over here, blah, 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 long story. And of course, they always said that the Normans became more Irish than the Irish themselves, because unlike the British, the English who colonized us, the Normans actually adopted our ways and intermarried, etc., etc. Anyway, so are there, because I know certainly in Brittany, there are lots of ancient, monuments going way, way Neolithic. Anything like that in Normandy?
Yes and no. Brittany is its own animal. I mean, Brittany is really, the second you cross into the region, you feel it's alive in a way that I don't think any other part of France is, and you really feel it very directly. The people there honor it in a way that I don't think it, but it's the Breton people are still, they're very proud of their region. They're very proud of being Celts. They're very proud of their language, though it's really just a flickering spark, desperate to stay alive at this point. But you feel it even in the way that people hold their gardens. In Brittany, when you look in the gardens that people have in their outside of their homes, it's wild. They let nature sort of do its thing. But then in Normandy, it's more less pagan sites, I would say. But I'm always surprised by the things you find. I started a sort of amateur hiking crew here in Paris with mostly fashion industry employees who want some connection to the land, and we call ourselves Rocksuckers Anonymous. and we will go out to try to find. I say we go out as if this is an ongoing thing. We did it once, and I'm very proud that we did it once. So I speak as though it's an ongoing, consistent thing. It will be again. But when I was trying to hunt for, what's the best place for our inaugural trip as the Rocksuckers, and I found a Neolithic burial tomb in Presles, which is a suburb to Paris. It's 45 minutes on the commuter train um, from the North Station, and it's just there. We went, and I thought this can't be true. They can't have something this close to Paris, but there it is in all its glory, absolutely phenomenally beautiful. And alive in a way that the Bois de Vincennes is not. The forests in Paris feel very lifeless, I guess, in a way that yeah, there's something off. And I thought I was just being an asshole again when I went into the forest the first time, and I thought, nah, I don't know if I feel anyone or anything. There was just something missing. But the more and more people who would come, who were sort of I don't know, similarly spiritually minded as me, the first comment they would make is, "Wow, it feels very eerie here. Like there's nothing, like there's no like the spirits of the land have been exorcised." I don't know how to really articulate that either. It's more of a feeling that you get when you go in there. But when you leave in Presles, when you're walking through, it's an absolutely different feeling where it's like, this is where they all went when they left the forest of Paris. They just, skedaddled their way to the other sides. Again, Brittany is its own thing. You feel it, it knocks the wind out of you the second you go into their territory. And because the Arthurian romances are French, they're Breton. All of the romance and the magic, and Merlin is forever imprisoned in Roussillon, which is the forest of Paimpont, which is in Brittany. I don't know. Is it magical because I know the history, or did I feel the history because it's magical? It's a question one could ask oneself. But for me, it's severe. Normandy, however, it's more of it's less specific. Brittany, it feels Celtic. It's a really specific feeling. Normandy feels very alive, very very flourishing, very full, but not necessarily specific. I wouldn't say that there's an overwhelming sense of Odin and Freya there. It's just more of a, but Ojulala is from Normandy. How nice.
There's somebody there. To go back to Paris, CJ Prince has a question for you. Have you seen the labyrinth in the Notre Dame Cathedral? A goddess well is said to be beneath it.
Really? No, I have.
There is a labyrinth in? There were so many. The big famous one is Chartres. I don't know where Chartres is, with the labyrinth there. And there is one in Notre Dame. Is it? And I was just wondering, was it damaged? With the fire and all of that.
I don't know. Honestly, Notre Dame is a little bit like Times Square at any moment of any day. So when you're in there, it's really hard to see anything, to be honest. It's so crowded. And I went in, of course, I had been in a lot of times before it was burnt, but then afterwards, it really, I would say there's maybe two times the amount that were there before, because Notre Dame is one of the most famous sites in the world of any sort, but the burning really put an extra special star on the map, and people have been very excited to go back and yeah. So I haven't seen much in there other than me and every other tourists oohing and awing and getting out as quickly as possible, because it's a lot in there.
It's interesting that he said, or I don't know if CJ is a he or she, or neither. A goddess well said to be beneath. Now that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And I know from the remaining labyrinths, as you know, I have a labyrinth in my own garden, and we built that in 2000, and there was a big flurry of building labyrinths to mark the millennium, and a lot of them are covered, and that the pews are over them, and that it's always a bit of trouble to get to look at the labyrinths in these churches, because it means that the pews have to be moved. So okay, interesting. So I'll just see if there's any
I
more.
will dig into that and find if there's a goddess well in there. I promise you, I'm gonna find it. this this gives me a nice hunt to go on.
Okay, now there's a question. Karasu, the dreamer, what advice do you have for city living and remaining connected to nature? And
Oh,
I'm trying to figure out how to have a garden at my new apartment.
well, I will. Um, hmm. I'm going to try not to sound too something. I can already feel. I know what I want to say, but I have a. It's going to sound so. You know, uh, uh, the garden. Isn't necessary. I think even in your house, it's beautiful to have things living inside your house, outside your house. If you have the opportunity, it's incredible to have things that are living around you. But I think that the most important thing that you can, the way to be connected is to understand that you don't. It's not the garden that's nature. You are. I am. It's everything. Um, the air we breathe, it's all alive. I think that for myself, especially when I was growing up and I felt like I didn't have any connection to anything, and I really wanted some kind of naturally growing uh, piece of living earth that I could talk to, and when it comes to plant care, I can't get a cactus to survive. So I'm really the wrong when it comes to that. I'm really there. I have not a green thumb. I have not a green. I have a big love, respect, and reverence, but don't trust me with your houseplants when you're on vacation. I will end them without trying. And but I think that being in cities, especially a city like New York, which makes Paris seem like a forest itself, you really have to kind of look inward, as hokey pokey as it sounds, because you find that that's where it all lives. That there's no difference between me and the tree outside. Spiritually, there's something that connects us, even if you can't see it. And I think that focusing on that is really important. Another thing that a lot of it's in a lot of Scandinavian folklore and in a lot of um, uh, Ukrainian, Central Eastern European folklore is the idea of without the nature of a growing thing, that there's a focus on the spirits of your home. The idea of connecting to the force that's in your home. People leave offerings to your sort of resident house elf in a way, and even I talk to my house in the same way that I talk to my dog, and maybe that makes me a little hokey pokey myself, but I do, because there is something. Um, in conclusion, tangent aside, if you look for it, you're going to find it. It's there. But try to focus, I would say, more on understanding yourself as a part of nature and not aside from it, because then it feels less urgent to bring nature in and to find it and surround yourself by it, because you are it. And I think that's kind of a powerful feeling, and also a feeling of it's that simultaneous feeling of absolute power and complete insignificance that I think is the magical balance of being alive. Yeah, did that answer a question?
That's lovely. And Morgan says, one tip I'd offer for urban druidry: each city has its own wheel of the year seasonal rhythms in a way. So trying to learn and tap into that can be very powerful.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
and I,
it's.
go on.
I was going to say it's very true because the seasons, no matter where you are, it's so different. And I think that is going back to in the beginning where I was talking about having a very difficult um, specific connection to land because I've moved a lot and my ancestry is so compounded with 1,000 different, there's no way of tracking exactly where it came from. And even where I'm staying, it's really difficult to do it. But when you get to a place, you feel it's um, I like to feel connected to where I am at any given time. So it's about those season that wheel exactly as Morgan mentioned, that it is something that's very special to the place that you're living. Um, yeah.
And I think that's really interesting because I think it's important to connect with the spirit of the place where you are and to those. So I know the Wheel of the Year here, and I suppose it's born in these islands, the Wise Islands. But my friend Marcus, who lives in Italy, and he's a gardener, he harvests his olives in November. November is Samhain. Samhain is the time for drawing in. It's all of that. And then, of course, if you're in the southern hemisphere, everything is upside down. And then you have different climates. So it's about finding that. And I worked with the writings, not the person himself, Malidoma Somé, when I taught human development for a long, long time. And his is a nature-based worldview, and I taught that, and because it's resonated so well with Druidry. But he talked about anytime he went to the city from the rural area, he would engage with the spirit of the city and check in with the spirit of the city in order to have some kind of balance and harmony while he was in the city. Because if he didn't, then things went off. And it's a bit like you go into somebody's house, you have to greet the people who live there and not just assume you can walk in. And it's just that being mindful. Of course, every town and city, like you say, Paris is one thing and Normandy is another spirit. And of course, there'll be many spirits in Normandy and in Paris. And then Brittany is something else. And it's about being able to tune in and put down some roots, however, or connecting with the energy of the earth and the place where you are. So
I think the first time that I heard of the Wheel of the Year, I was maybe I was 12 and I lived in Florida, and our Wheel of the Year is flat. It's so subtle, the seasonal changes, that the sun never leaves, and our Wheel of the Year is gauged by when is it time for fires, when is it time for hurricanes, when is it time. So even that you have your own, still now when it's 20 degrees, to me all of my insides tell me it's time to put a Christmas tree up. It's so my body is still very adjusted to my understanding of what winter feels like. And I think that even though now I live in a place with four pretty clear seasons, or at least 2.5 seasons, more than Florida had anyway. I still think it's nice when I really, I don't know if wallow is the right word. I linger in that feeling when it's not even Samhain, and I feel a ho 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 within coming out. I really I relish in it. Because it reminds me of where I grew up and where all of this started, and where you know my first understanding of the Wheel of the Year, my first understanding of the fact that there were in fact druids outside of the sword and the stone, and keeping these kind of things. It's funny how I fought so hard to get out of Florida. And I left the day I was 18. I moved to New York. I didn't look back. I never lived there again. But how many of my memories that make me feel the most empowered where I am now are directly attached to Florida, directly attached to the place that I absolutely loathed and felt like an alien and an outsider and an outcast. And I think now that It's dumb little things like that. Like the temperature drops a little bit, and I feel like, oh, I don't know. I feel like a child, and it connects me to my past, and it connects me to, and I have this, full circle moment where I look where I'm standing now and think of the absurdity of the fact that I live in Paris, and the absurdity of the fact that I'm still alive after after all these years, and it's such a nice feeling, and yeah, if that makes any sense.
I'm intrigued by, and this is, I suppose, the paradox of living in life and our own lives. How seminal, I mean, it is with all of us wherever we grew up. But you say you couldn't wait to get out, and somehow that fed you and has fed
Mm.
your reactions to your landscape now. And I think that's fascinating. I'd love to talk. What kind of a spiritual background did you come from, and how did you? You mentioned an altar in your house when you were a young boy. How did all that start? I mean, I think that would be really interesting.
Well, how much time do you have?
Go on.
So we when we so I my family was a hodgepodge of everything. My dad was culturally Catholic. My dad is three-quarters Cherokee, but born in a really a tough circumstances. Born in a dirt floor shack in Appalachia, really struggled with everything his whole life, with food, with his parents dying when he was very young, with trying to raise all of his brothers. No sustenance, no shoes, and his attachment to spirituality was kind of this blend of, we were not culturally Cherokee by any stretch of the imagination. We were very much townies, and in a very kind of classic um, classic way. I don't know how to articulate that. But his spirituality was very Catholic, institutionally, I guess I would say. But when he would talk about God, the God that I would hear about in Mass on Sundays, my dad's God was so much more. He was so much. There was more depth. There was more. It wasn't black and white. There was, to my dad, very devout Catholic, no such thing as hell. Hell is what you create yourself. Hell is what you can inflict upon people if you're not careful with the way that you behave. But the idea of hell was very, and the devil and wrongdoing as being coming from somewhere else and not from within you. So he was there was something very pagan about my dad's version of the Christian faith. My mom was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and was very, for lack of a better term, skeezed out by the idea of religion as a whole. When she left um, her parents' house, she moved straight in with my dad. She went um, from doting daughter to wife to mother. She really was sort of shifted through without an ability to ever know herself, because she didn't think she was allowed. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
um yeah, it was her needs, her wants, everything was so far in the back, it's like she wouldn't acknowledge that there was a there that it was an option for her to have wants and hopes, or a spiritual life that wasn't the spiritual life that would best blend to her surroundings. So
Mhm.
in terms of religion, it was a very intense upbringing, of everything and also nothing. We went through a lot of different churches for a while. A lot of Protestant churches, Baptist churches, Pentecostal churches, and when I was 5, sort of, or 6 maybe, begged to go to a Catholic church because at least there it smelled nice. That was my that was my interest in it, and also there was a lot less of this idea of hell, that we didn't really learn about in my family. The idea of hell, I always saw if there was an Antichrist, if there was a Lucifer, if there was a devil, my understanding of it was very much that he needed a friend, that he, even in the mythology itself, when I would hear about it, I would think, man, this guy just really loved his father, and then suddenly he was replaced with something else, and I don't know, I felt an sympathy for the devil. Cue the music. But it was because I never understood evil as being something that's outside, outside of myself, or outside of human society. I don't think that you find evil animals or evil trees or evil. It's something that humans have created. Anyway, I digress. So grew up that way a lot, was going through all of the processes when I was 12, 13 of becoming, I was going to be confirmed, and I was going to, go through the whole kit and caboodle. And then through another series of events, I realized that it was Mary I was drawn to the most, because I was drawn to a goddess. And so I left the church, and I it was the 90s, so I went straight to Wicca. That was my gateway drug, as it was, I think, for a lot of preteens and teenagers in the 90s. That was we listened to Enya, and we burnt Nag Champa, and we downloaded spell books from AOL.com's chat rooms. But it came from the Orlando Public Library, as strange a place as it is. There was a place where I was. It was my escape. I was pretty, without pulling out my tiny violin, I had a really rough childhood. We were poor in the South. I was gay. I didn't understand that. I didn't have any understanding of sexuality. I was a very late bloomer. I was, I liked building things and reading books and watching shows and pondering and playing in the dirt. And so when the assaults then turned into attacks, then turned into a lot of pretty gruesome experiences, it started happening. I eventually was outrunning some people, and got onto a public city bus, and ended up at the library in order to hide myself. And the library in Orlando itself it's like a castle. It's a brutalist masterpiece. I think it was built by John Johansson, who was a student of Marcel Breuer, or he worked for Marcel Breuer. He was a student of Walter Gropius, who founded Bauhaus, and he called it a composition and monolithic concrete. And that's really what it is. It's just this massive castle that was in Orlando. You walk in, and it was like, it was the closest I had ever experienced in walking into a fairy tale. Really, just a magical place. And I went there out of necessity, because in my it was get on the bus, run for your life, or death is what it felt like. And when I went in there, I created a universe for myself, because when I went in there and saw this building, and I felt this just the scent, the dust, the old pages, the silence. I could hear myself think. I could feel. Talk about spirits of place. That was the spirit that saved my life, very, very, very literally. And I would go, and I was in there for years, every day. Once I found it the first time, I would go in every single day, and I found, maybe it was on the third floor. I started in one section, and every day I would go there, and just for hours I would read my way through every book I could find. And I started with Ireland. So when I was 13, I was sort of an expert on the Troubles. But absolutely, just because that was what was in front of me when I went up there. And I would go home and ask my parents, questions they weren't prepared to answer, because they weren't sure why I was asking about balaclavas at 11, 12 years old. And from there I moved on, and I eventually came to a section about mythology. And rather than it being Greek mythology, classical mythology, my first introduction to it in a setting where I had access to all of these books at the same time, it was Irish mythology, Celtic mythology. I remember reading these stories, just kind of foaming at the mouth, of thinking of this other land, and these people, all of the races of Ireland, who like a Roman church, you can see the layers everything still exists. You go to Ireland now, and even though most of the country sees themselves as Christian, don't you dare, build a road that's going to interfere with that ferry fort. It's this layer cake of traditions, and reading that and feeling this, it was such an eye opener. And then beside the mythology section was the section on spirituality and the occult, and there it was, oh, did you like those stories? Because guess what, they're still here. You can still connect to them, and I was in there for years doing this. And there is, little by little, I started building this universe, that was my. It feels wrong to call it an escape, because I wasn't escaping. I was not running from something. When I found it, I was joining something. I felt like I was connecting myself to something that made absolute sense. Outside of that library, I felt like just an absolute freak. And inside that library, I would open these books, and I would read about these gods, and I would read about these spirits, and I thought, this is my home. And honestly, I've never stopped feeling that. I still feel like that today. I was very lucky to have found that library. I was very lucky for a metaphysics bookshop in Orlando called Avalon, and Avalon still exists. I check in once a month to make sure their website is still up and running, because it was the most. Still today, there are a lot of occult bookstores I love all over the world, and a lot of stores that drive spirituality. Treadwell's in London, I is one of the most magical, wonderful communities of everybody who works in there is just so kind and welcoming and inclusive, and that was the first time I felt like I had felt when I went into Avalon the first time, when I was maybe 13, and I walked in, and it was run by an English woman with long red hair, and she was so severe. She had this kind of, I don't know if she was severe, actually. Now I don't. Then she was Angelica Houston. She all of her features. She was so beautiful and so tall, and I was so little and round, and I had this kind of admiration for her, and she never said anything about this, little kid strolling around and cautiously opening up, any little book I could find. And I remember books by DJ Conway, Celtic Magic, which I still have a copy of, and this intro into this world. And I saw there was a big kind of message board, a real one for any Gen Z here. We used to have them on the walls, and you tack paper into them, and there was something on there that said Wicca 101, a course for a year and a day. And I ripped off the little number, and I took it home to my dad, and I said, I'm a witch, and I'm going to go to this course. And my dad said, okay, but I'm coming with you. And because if you're gonna leave the church, if you're gonna exercise your spirituality elsewhere, then I'm gonna know who you're worshiping. I want to know what this religion is. I want to know if it's a force for good. I want to understand the people you're going to be around. And he went with me every week, class by class, 2.5 hours a night. My dad would sit there with me, and in this circle of people who were learning about witchcraft for the first time. And her name was Hillary. I'll never forget her, who was the Wiccan priestess who was running this course. And she opened every ritual in Irish. It was the first time I'd ever heard Irish. I read all about it in the library when I was, sitting on the floor for hours, but to hear it spoken in a magical context, it just blew my mind open. And she explained, it was my dad who asked a lot of questions. I was kind of starstruck by an Irish speaking witch in front of me. My dad had a lot of questions, who do you worship? Do you worship the devil? Why do you use a pentagram? Why do you do this and this and this? And she explained it in a way that Eimear, I'm pretty sure I've recounted this to you before, that she explained God as a diamond, and she said a diamond is one block, it's one chunk, and a diamond is one piece, but it has a million facets. Every little facet of that diamond, those facets being there, doesn't mean that the diamond isn't one whole. And she said every facet of that one facet is Jesus Christ, if you like. One facet is the Morrigan. One facet is you. One facet is your son. One facet is any of the Buddhas you like. And one facet is Odin. Another facet is Freya. Whatever you're connected to, whatever you want to call the facet, whatever colors and bells and whistles you attach to the facet you're speaking to the thing, the force that is in all of us, that is all of us, that we are all made up of and comprised to. And that was that diamond comparison. I still use it today because I think it's such a beautiful way to think of it myself, and also a way to feel community with Christians themselves, which, you know, my bullies used Jesus and God like it was, you know, the last thing they'd ever do, making sure that I knew that God hated me. But and even then, seeing this diamond perspective, I see like you're calling it something else, but we believe the same thing, man. We're respecting what put us here, and it this diamond metaphor really, as years gone by, obviously, you know, I'm a lot older than I was then, but it makes me feel a sort of ecstatic connection to everyone. As with risk of sounding like a hippie, it really that diamond, knowing that we're all here of the same force, by the same force. There's something very beautiful about that. And Hillary, the Irish witch of Orlando, Florida, really nailed it into me. And that diamond analogy was what my dad said, "You're all right," and then he stopped going to the classes, and I was allowed to go by myself. I think that's all he needed to hear. That was his, you know, that was it. But all of those, there's so many pieces of that puzzle that are so silly now that I think of, you know, reading all of my books that I started reading, Scott Cunningham, Silver Ravenwolf, who I think might be canceled now. There are a lot of all of those authors that now when I read them, when I still have a copy of Celtic Magic, and when I open it and I read through it, it's silly and it's funny, and my view, my own spirituality has evolved so much since then, but I still can read it and just absolutely love it, because just like when the temperature drops, I feel I have that feeling of being 12, 13, and finding myself for the first time, finding my place in all of this for the first time. And yeah, now, and I think that coming from all of that, from the library to Avalon to the course of Hillary, and then eventually finding my way to Druidry, it all, there's no part of it that I regret. Nothing. I have, you know, I have no, remember my Wiccan days? I don't, because all of it has brought me closer to who I am, and quite frankly, I'm absolutely not done evolving. And if I am, I'm in trouble, because the idea of my soul ever being done would be alarming. I feel like I'm just expanding and contracting, and you know, we all are. Anyway, that's my history with spirituality.
So I mean, yeah. So what you're describing, all these, you know, these formational experiences, you know, really, really important, and it's a wonderful story and very, very rich. So how did you find Obod?
I have no idea. I mean, I did. I think it was when I moved to London the first time, which was 11 years ago. It must have been at Treadwell's, and I think I was talking to Christine Oakley Harrington, who runs the place, and I was absolutely starstruck, because, you know, I had read about her and I saw her in an interview once, and I was trying to hold myself together, and the more I explained, she kind of said, "Oh, you know, Druidry, really, you know, there's the shelf. These are the books that I can recommend. But if you really want to know about the Druids, there's an organization here." I'm almost certain that it was she who led me directly into the arms of Obod, and then I found out, you know, a correspondence course. I can have these things mailed to my house. It all felt very exactly what I was looking for, something tangible. And I've been solo for so long in every spiritual practice. Everything is by myself. I've never had a group. I've had people who I've spoken to in passing, but the idea of Obod as a community, it was very alluring. And shamefully, I've never been to an Obod event outside of a Lunasa ritual in on your land. That was the only time I've ever been with other people. That's kind of insane to think about that, actually. That was the first time in my life, which is why I think I had such a strong reaction to being there. And then it really felt like, oh, I better start taking it, because I can't tell you how many times I've ordered the correspondence force, and then I've moved and I've lost the booklets and I started again. And I'm wondering when the people at the desk are going to say, "Is this not your 35th time ordering the damn Bard course? When are you going to finish? Please stop writing to us." But now with the Hearth, shameless plug, I have constant access to it online. So even if I lose my little books again, I have a constant access to it, and it's very nice listening to Philip Cargom's voice say anything. So I listen to him read a phone book. So it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
really I feel very lucky to have found it, because I think that there's something so inclusive about Druidry as a concept. As you know, there's something much more inclusive about it. Where, I would read, I read A Witch's Bible when I was 13. That was one of my first big tomes that I read by Stuart and Janet Farr, and there was so much about extremely just heteronormativity to a degree that I thought, am I allowed to be here? Is this all right for me to be here? I felt like there was none of that. And also the idea of Druidry being for kind of anyone, that there are Catholics at the Lunasa ritual, that it's this beautiful thing where everybody is coming together. And I remember having that distinct feeling when I was there and listening to someone, when everybody's acknowledging the gods of the land and the gods that they would like to bring in, somebody bringing Mary into it. And I remember thinking, this is the diamond. It's here in this circle of people, and all of these people that are connected to Druidry through Obod, through you, not to give you a big head, but through their connection to you and your ability to build a community. It was really, that's where I got to see the diamond in action, my theory put to reality, and that to me is very specific to Druidry and very specific to Obod. Yeah, and I'm still here despite the fact that I have yet to complete any of the courses. I can guarantee you that I love reading them over and over and over again, and someday when I get to the Ovate grade, God, my mind might just implode on itself. I'm going to be tickled to death that there's this whole other wall that I get to crash through.
Well, you see, this is what's one of the strengths, one of the beauties of the courses that we offer, is that it's self-paced, and you just take as long as you need. And there's no such thing as a qualified druid, or no such thing as a good one or a bad one. And everybody has their own pace. Like, it took me 6 years to complete the Bardic one, and I wasn't a bard. I just didn't feel like one. It wasn't until I'd handed in my review that I started telling stories. That doesn't make sense, but that was the path and the process that I followed. And yeah, I mean, normally at Obod ceremonies we don't invoke spirit. I do, because I'm also part of the Fellowship of Isis, but it's really important for me to offer that space for people to invoke from any tradition, and it's very, very rich to allow. And of course, your metaphor of the diamond is really, really beautiful one, because it's it's about what unites us and connects us, and not fighting over who's what called or whatever it is. Yeah, and Patricia says Catholic means universal, as I feel nature-based Obad does. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like a small C, not a big C. Very, very important.
Mm.
And Anton says, so inspiring, and I like the diamond picture very much, especially being a Catholic and a bard. Thank you both for the awesome event. Yeah, I think it's and that's one of the things I really love about the order is that it's inclusivity, and it's
Mm.
diversity. I'd say it's would someone repeat the bookshop James mentioned? London, please. It's Treadwell's, isn't that it?
That's it. Treadwells. Not to be confused with Treadwell's manicure and salon services, also in London, different website.
Okay, I've just put
Where
it
I
in
ended up a
Treadwell.
few times.
Okay, that's going out for everybody there. Yeah, brilliant.
It's
So,
a really beautiful place.
so when you how would you say your Druidry has helped you in your life?
I mean, for lack of a thought out response, it helped me get over myself. Does that make sense? It's, I mean, I walk around with a lot of a heavy chip on my shoulder when I think about my childhood and all of the really unfortunate things that I went through and that I faced from, as early as I can remember. And with it took me a long time to kind of see that with the chip on my shoulder, I also it can only be there if I have an ego that's equal in size. I can't be mad at the offenses caused to me without an understanding of my own self-importance. And that's not to say that we shouldn't demand respect because we're all deserving respect. I was
Mhm.
absolutely when I think of 11-year-old me, some of the things that happened, I could weep imagining this little kid who was going through things that were so unacceptable, and he didn't deserve that, and he I'm him. I still don't deserve it, but I think that Druidry, it's the I think that of all of the spiritual paths and little alcoves I found myself in, Druidry, it is the inclusivity, and not just the inclusivity of queer people, which feels I've never in my life felt like maybe this isn't my spot. It doesn't feel like that, but it goes beyond inclusivity for me as a person, but also inclusive of other people in my community, not my community because I am a Catholic, but my community because my neighbors are Catholic. And to me, the idea of my next door neighbor worshiping a different God on one side, on the other side, my neighbors are Muslim, and the idea that they're all um, invited, they can all find something beautiful. It's that inclusivity that now I think is more. It's more important than ever. We're in a situation, I think, internationally. There's no one that's free of it, and um, I'm trying very hard not to be political, but I'm just gonna say that I think that there are people who profit off of our division. There are people
Yes.
who want me to look at my Muslim neighbor and see them as invaders. There are people who want me to look at my Catholic neighbors and see them as idol worshiping psychopaths. There are people who want me excluded, want you excluded, want them excluded, because while we fight each other, they laugh their way to the bank with our money, with our joy, with our self-respect. And I think that now the idea of inclusivity to me is so much more all-encompassing of an ideal than it was when I think of my own, uh, you know,
Exclusion.
the
Yeah.
intersection where I live. I think of all of the other people who I have nothing to do with, and I think that old I used to have a bumper sticker and on the one and only car I had, which was that it turned on was a mystery, but the bumper sticker was that quote that I'm going to absolutely butcher of, you'll all know it if I say that: first they came for the trade unionists and I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. That one. And I think about it all the time of you don't have to agree with someone to believe in their humanity. You don't have to
That's right.
understand someone to believe in their right to exist. You don't have to love the same as another person loves to understand that their love is that they're deserving of it, that they're deserving of stability and joy and happiness. But there is one side of the world, and forget not that they are an absolute minority of people. There is one side who thinks uh, that they should be able to impose their values on us. That they should be able to say, "Oh, everything's fine here, nothing to see, and the only reason you don't have any money is because of that immigrant over there. But don't mind the pile of gold I have behind me. Don't mind the fact that I've been siphoning your wealth out, siphoning your joy away, poisoning your water wells, destroying your forests for all this time. It's that Mexican who's coming across the border with nothing, starving, trying to feed his family, risking his life, the life of his loved ones, just to be able to have a chance. It's his fault. It's him you should be angry at, not the person with 7 mansions, up and down the eastern seaboard. And I think that at this point, when the choice is so obvious, it's so clear, we have to ask ourselves, why is it not clear for everyone? Why does nobody see that gelatinous tangerine fascist piece of shit? Why can they not hear what he's saying? He's saying it verbatim. He's saying it literally. He's saying, don't trust your neighbor, only trust me. Don't trust this. Don't trust your eyes, your ears, your anything. It's me and me alone who will save you. And I think that the absolute absurdity of it makes me feel it doesn't upset me. It boggles my mind. And so now what I'm trying to do, speaking of inclusivity, and then I just, I'm not inclusive of him. I'm not inclusive of quite a few creatures that are making decisions that are costing the lives of countless people. But I am trying to understand in a way the people who voted for him. I'm not one of the people who thinks we should cater to ideals that are against humanity in order to build bridges with people who are lacking in it. I don't think that, but I do think that there's a major difference between the people who are desperate, who are the less we have, the more disconnected from each other we are, the easier it is to manipulate us, the easier it is to feed us this confirmation bias that we're because we don't want it to be true that that the people who we elected, the people who we're putting in, the people who we're propping up, we don't want it to be true that they're monsters. We don't want it to be true that they're pillaging not only our environment and our neighbors but us. And I think that there has to be something, and I don't have the answer because I still am I am digging in a deep well of compassion to find any for people who stand on the side of fascists. But I think that it's I think that we have to. Do I want to be right, or do I want to have results? Do I want to be principally pleased with myself that I know that racism is bad, that I know that billionaires are the only minority we should be afraid of, not immigrants, not gay people, not queers, not trans people, not women, not Muslims. The only minority destroying the world are billionaires, and I can see that, I know that, but what good does that do me if I can't speak to someone who doesn't agree with me and hopefully coax them back to a way of life that isn't right for me. It's right for them. It's right for all of us. The only way we move forward is together, and that includes people who we vehemently disagree with. The goal is not to shut them out. The goal is to find something. And again, I don't know what the something is. I'll let you know when I figure it out, because it is very difficult to watch people being blackbagged off of the streets, and thrown into SUVs by masked cowards, and to think that it's a very, very complicated thing. But I think that everybody in the world has the same situation in their own country right now. The United States is just one in a sea of them. You look at this right-wing surge in Europe. You look at this election tomorrow in Ireland, and you have these choices of one woman who is saying history matters. It's not about clinging to your past. It's about acknowledging your past. It's about recognizing where you went wrong so that you cannot make those mistakes again. It's about looking in the past and seeing these were the two sides against each other. Look at us now. Look how far we've come. And the only way to appreciate where we are is to know where we came from. And I think that Ireland is really at this point it's the last progressive hope. No pressure, any Irish people watching, but it's really to imagine that Catherine Connolly will not become president makes me terrified, because the soul of the nation represented in the last place, where I feel like there's still a chance, where the people are even more forward thinking than the government that represents them. Ireland represents that, and I think it's a really beautiful it's a beautiful beacon, that such a small country can have such a huge impact on the world. That has such a huge impact against genocide. It has such a huge, I mean, it's such a cultural powerhouse, but I think that everybody also needs to understand Ireland as a cultural and political powerhouse, because everything has fallen, and it's time to light the fucking torches. And it's again, no pressure out there for
the
Ireland.
hard
But
thing is that our government is not very in touch with, Catherine Connolly is, with the nation. So when we think of the pro-Palestinian, the anti-genocide protests, etc., and our government play lip service to that, but then we're indirectly supporting the regime in Israel, and yet the people aren't. And I hope, because I certainly will be getting out to vote tomorrow, that she will win. Not being biased at all, but I think for a woman who's so articulate and so humane and so compassionate, and has had so many, she's a psychologist, she's been a barrister, I can't remember all the things. She can kick a football with all this fancy footwork. I know it's got a name. She's been able to connect with so many stratas of society in her campaign, and answered really shitty questions, being harangued by questions. She stays calm and she answers it with intelligence, with integrity, with honesty,
with
clarity,
kindness, which I think is maybe the most. If I listening to the radio interviews, and just to clarify, I am not Irish. I have no skin in that game. I'm just very concerned because it's the last. To me, it's this election is so important for the rest of Europe, and so I'm paying close attention. I'm listening to all the interviews, and some of the questions. I think I can pride myself on my diplomacy, but mother, God, I don't think I could handle it. Because when she's answering, she really wants the person asking her the question not just to accept her answer and move on. She wants the person to understand her answer. It's not about acceptance, it's understanding. And I think that all of her time in the Dáil, all of her time mediating, I think that it's so clear in her, her desire. I see her and I think, God, I want to be that. I want to have that. That's the well of compassion I'm digging in, for people who have been duped by this wave of right-wing extremism, and she just has it at the ready. And I think, God, I want to be that. And how incredible it is to have the option to vote for someone who you want to be like. What better role model for a nation than someone who you want to emulate because of their goodness. And because of their ability to speak to people so far from her on the spectrum. I think it's I told you I wasn't going to be political, and now I'm just going on Catherine Connolly's
I think it's
stumping
very
campaign,
hard.
so.
Blake says, if only we could all get to realize coexistence is not a threat. And there's Karis, who has been talking about, parents and the extreme right and how painful all of that is. And when we have family members who are frightened and thinking in a particular way, that is really painful. And it's we can't control how people think, but I suppose it's like Jules said, "You're not alone in this, James. It's challenging to have any objectivity with oppressive people beyond heartbreaking. I've no answer either, other than to tell myself not to be an asshole." I think that's fair enough, Jules.
Yeah, going back to Druidry telling me to get over myself, that's what I'm clinging to. I'm clinging to something. So I'm reaching for something more ethereal than myself, because everything in me is rage at injustice.
And, you know, if we go back to the peace prayer, it's about starting, you know, with our, and coming back, because I'll rant and I'll rave when things don't go right for me, whatever it is. And then it's like, okay, let's get back into the center again, because that's where we start. And then just come out to the grove, and then out to the rest of humankind. And I think that we need to, you know, and it's always that dance in and out. You can't stay in that sense of, oh, I'm quiet all the time. But
it's funny, because I played your reading of the prayer about, you know, I'm not even going to try. Basically, peace beginning here and radiating outwards. May I be this? And I played that for you know, fashion industry Parisians, A-type personalities, zero, agnostic at best, atheist at most common, and their reaction to hearing it is always very like, oh, what an idea. I mean, it's something that's so simple but so beautiful that really I use. I think about I'm gonna you know, wax poetically about my mom, as to me, and for anybody who has a family who has really complicated political beliefs with which you vehemently disagree. I hope this can offer some kind of hope to people who are coming from someplace. But my mom had always been kind of difficult politically for me, and over the years we've had a lot of rough and tumble stumbling about what I believe versus what she believes, and it's really to see her grow as I've grown, to try my best to understand where she's coming from, because I think that a lot of people, especially in our families, when we see something, when we see injustice and we see it for the first time, and it's a view of what justice is, it differs from our family, and we call it out and we say, that's not okay, that's this, that's that you're feeding into this, your original. I mean, you know, as a teenager I was not particularly polite to anybody, but I think that it's really, your family can see it as a rebuke of the values with which you were raised, and I think that that's really complicated, because when I think of why I have the leanings that I have, why I have the obsession with justice that I have, it's because of my mom. So the idea that she would feel rebuked, or that I was trying to distance myself from where I came from, it's a really complicated thing, because I always think, what are you talking about? All of this I learned from you. My mom is a tank. She's the strongest person I have ever known in my life. There is no one with her strength, and she wears her heart on her sleeve. She loves. I have no question that still today she's not necessarily a spring chicken anymore. She would rip someone apart with her bare hands if they came for me. She has this love in her that is, to me, my mom. With the risk of sounding very dramatic, my mom to me, it was my first understanding of the goddess anthropomorphized, this wow, symbol of absolute love, absolute, for just wet soil to grow in, and to feel comforted in, and this hug, and also this rage if there's an upset to the balance of my happiness. That is who my mom is to me. She's such a different she's such a different creature to even how she views herself. She sees fault after fault. She looks at me and thinks, "Oh God, what have I done to ruin you? What have I?" And to me, I think I am everything that I am because of her. I'm all of my compassion, all of my love for other people. It's all from her. And this is a woman who I could not have been further apart from politically. But all of my compassion that led to the political philosophies that I have came from her love, from her telling me how I should treat other people, from me watching how she treated other people. That's what raised me. That's what put me into this position. Over time, my mom really started looking at things differently. She sort of Fox News turned off in the house, and she started looking at things and saying, you know, why was a question. Why do I think this? Why should I believe this person? Why do I not like these people? And again, it sounds so simple. It sounds, but to watch her believe in a worldview that she had her entire life and then change in her late 50s, early 60s, talk about strength. I mean, it's really it's such an incredible thing to see someone who I never thought would change their views. I know who she is. I know what's in her heart. I know what's in there. I was raised with it. I've loved it since I first opened my eyes as an infant. But the way she votes always scratched at me, and now I don't know how she votes. I can assume because she's really, her political philosophies have really changed over time.
How did that happen? So, what was it that got her to ask that first why question? What happened? Was there something that
I don't. There's a lot of dark family dynamics outside of me and my mom that have really influenced all of us negatively. But I think that when they left, it gave her the ability to. I think I was saying earlier that she never got to know herself. She was never allowed. She never saw it as an option. She finally was allowed. And not that anyone disallowed her. She wouldn't allow herself. My mom's first order of business always is secure everyone in the room. She is the walking embodiment of the opposite of what they tell you on the airplane. She's putting everyone's air mask on, oxygen mask before her own. And if she completely runs out of air, she wouldn't blink twice because everybody's settled, And so watching her come into her own and realize not only what she has to offer, which is one major layer of it, is understanding kind of she has no idea how awesome she is. She really and I don't know if she ever will. But she understands a little bit more. Hey, I'm really good at taking pictures. Hey, um I have these friends who really like me. Why do they like me? Who knows, but they like me. I must be doing something right. Just these tiny little
insights? Yeah.
insights into the fact that she is awesome. And then also understanding that she is also deserving of respect and love and security and compassion and warmth and kindness. And I think her kind of learning and leaning into herself, it it was that, and we've had a lot of really difficult conversations over my life, but there was never a moment where I felt like she didn't love me. If she didn't understand a stance I took, and in that I feel I recognize how privileged I am. My parents are very, very different than me in so many ways, but I've never felt like I didn't belong. Any feeling of not belonging came from me. I felt like an alien. They never ventured out to make me feel like there was something wrong with me. Even when I came out, I was pretty young when I came out, and I did it back up, chest up, ready for war, ready to be disowned, and it was we love you. What are you talking? Why are your bags packed? So, and I have so many friends who it was so different. So I'm never unaware of how lucky I am to have the parents I have. My mom took me to Europe for the first time. We had no money. She brought me here with a buddy pass from the airline she worked for, and showed me a different world. And the purpose was she wanted me to see what was available to me. Don't think that this setup that we have here is all that's all you're worth. You can have any of it. And I was 8, and we went from nothing to suddenly we're in Paris and looking around. And now I look around to where I am, and I'm in Paris. I live in Paris, and every time I talk shit about how much I hate living here, I remember this 8-year-old me standing here with my mom and her saying, you know, Simba, look out at this world that can all be yours. And now I'm here, and it's because of her. And I think that it's I don't think I answered your question. I meant to say how she ended up evolving politically, but I just ended up talking to you about how much I love my mom, which I think I missed the point of the question. But I do I love the woman. But this
it's so lovely to be able to say that. Karis, who says my parents are completely unsupportive of me being queer,
oh
and
God,
that
I'm
is
sorry.
really really hard, you know. And you know, mom listens to Fox News constantly, and that's heartbreaking when it's okay, Karasu. This is, you know, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. It's interesting because your surname is the Dreamer, and never
Mm,
lose sight of those dreams. And, you know, when I was as a client, you know, my therapist telling me you have to grieve for the parents that you didn't get, you know, or for
mm.
not getting the parents that you needed or deserved. And I think that's really, really important. It's sad. Yeah.
And
And
Karasu,
again,
I
some
have a new so I
one.
have a new quote, a new fact that I learned relatively recently that I am shoving down the throat of anyone who has ears, which is blood is thicker than water is not it's not the actual that's not the quote. It's longer. And it's my favorite fact that I'm yelling at anyone. And it's that
Yeah.
the blood of the covenant is thicker than the waters of the womb. That's what blood is thicker than. And you have when I look around at my family, it's not just my mom. My family, I have built them person by person, brick by brick. I would take bullets for them. I know they do the same for me. Coming from an unsupportive family, like I said, I feel spoiled thinking that your parents aren't supportive. It's really heartbreaking. But I think that the an important thing to remember is that your family is the one you build. Um, for for a long time, I thought about all of the people, and it's not the same as family, so I don't want to equate being kind of an outcast in my school or anything to a family, because that's where you're supposed to feel the safest. And I'm really sorry to hear that it's not a supportive place. But I do think um, when I was thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me, I spent so much time um, really. I've never been an aggressive person. It's not in me, so I couldn't say that I'm angry and that I was raging out against anything. And it doesn't sound like you are either. But for me, I think that finding I realized that my upset about not feeling wanted or loved or expected, I focused so much on that it took me a very long time before I looked around and realized, oh, uh, there's all of this love out here, so many people to give it, so many people who want me around, so many familial connections I can find. And once I started, it was a very long process to, wiggle my way through and find something. But I think that, um, yeah, I think it's important to recognize that your family is who you choose it to be,
Yes. It's
and there's
yeah,
something liberating in that. That
yeah. And I just to match your phrase is the Scottish phrase, the bonds of milk are stronger than the bonds of blood. And Cara Sue says, I'm pretty sure I have religious PTSD from how I was raised. You are not alone in that. There are so many, and I come from a very strong Roman Catholic background, and my mother's 89 is now okay with me, but she wasn't originally. You know, it was very painful for her that I wasn't a practicing Catholic and I was going to go to hell and she was going to go to hell as well. And I think it's very, very sad when people are so insecure about their own spiritual paths and their own investment and the need to be right. Um, that's a really, really hard one. So,
I think too that there's always there's so much opportunity for change, that I think it's also, the pain is pain, and if it's abuse, you don't need to keep the door open even a sliver. You know, but if it's to, when I was 12, I had my little altar built, and I came home, and my mom didn't want the devil in the house, and um, she she smashed it down. Everything was ripped, broken, the books shredded, and it was a really it was awful. I was so humiliated, and I felt so small, and um, it was really just awful. Here I was thinking like, I'm in service of the goddess, and then I come in, and it's like, no, you're not, you stupid child. You know nothing. This is it was very complicated. Years passed on, and when I was 17, my mom had gone through a lot of different waves of who she was, and we were still in a really complicated familial situation. But then I moved to Sweden. I became a very different person myself. I lived out in where I was accepted and seen for the first time as a human being. I wasn't the F slur that I was called. I wasn't the, you know, I lived, I felt respect for the first time in my life. And with that respect came also a real righteous indignation that how dare anyone ever say anything to me that isn't nice ever again. You know, not nice. I didn't need people to be nice to me. I didn't need people to tell me I was pretty and pat me on the head for a job well done. I just wanted to be seen as a human being. And I didn't know that I wanted to be seen as a human being until I realized I wasn't being seen as well. I just, moving to Sweden changed my understanding of myself, of the world around me, of what's possible, of what's allowed. And because when my mom took me to Paris when I was 8 and said all of this can be yours, I believed it for 2 years, and then I thought, you know, the only thing I was worthy of was a slow death in a bathtub. And I really think that building myself back up from that, Sweden was a massive part of it. And we came from my mom ripping up the books and really making it clear that this, you know, devil worshipping horseshit isn't going to happen. You know, this, we went from that to then when I was 17, I moved back from Sweden, and it was the first Christmas that I had been home. I was home for 2 or 3 months at that point. And it was that Christmas, it was just me, my mom, and my dad. My brother was wherever he was, but maybe he was bygones. And underneath the tree, there were a lot of presents for me, and we were not a family of mega means. So I thought, why? You know, they must have missed me when I was in Sweden to have this many things. And I started opening them, and my mom had gone to Avalon, the bookstore in Orlando, and she asked the people there, what are the books that you may know, my kid? I did something I'm ashamed of. Help me. And she rebought all of the books that she had ripped up, and they were all waiting for me. And it was so seeing her too, sort of on pins and needles as I opened them, looking at my face to see, do you forgive me? Do you? And for me, I had already forgiven her. I had moved so far beyond it, but she was carrying that hurt from when I was 12 for both of us. For how long was she carrying it? But I can guarantee you that it was not, as the kids say, on my bingo card, that my mom would buy me an arsenal of um, books about Imbolc and you know, but there they were under the tree, and I think that it's important to remember that people are capable of change, because people, no matter what affiliation they have, people want to be good. And it seems again like a dumb trope, some useless cliche, but I think that people want to be good, and all we have to do is give them the opportunity to be so. People are also wanting to be good generally by under the confines of what their surroundings, their community tells them is good, and that way your parents, people that are not going to vote for Catherine Connolly, people who vote for Donald Trump. In that way, they have what their idea of being good is very stretched, far from what we may understand it as being. All you can do is live that goodness yourself, protect your heart, but also don't be afraid of being open to the blood of the covenant. I think
Absolutely. And it's interesting, just David Jones, I'll just put it up here on the thingy. He says, for me, the
yes,
fundamental question is, do I love myself? If that is so, then love tends to permeate our relations in some mysterious way. Once I started to take myself seriously and have respect for myself in terms of my opinions or whatever, then people started to take me seriously. Because I'm very small, as you know, I'm 5 foot tall, and people were just kind of little Eimear, pat me on the head and not really taking me seriously. But I didn't either. It's like, well, what am I? What have I got to offer? And just that in my head, do I respect myself? Do I value? Do I see, have I any worth? Do I love myself? And that then, because then you radiate that out. I think that's not to say, if people are treating you badly, it's because that's what you're projecting out. That's not what I'm saying. I have to be really careful about that. But like you were attacked on the street, well, then you were looking for it. I'm not suggesting that for a minute. But I do know that now if I say something, I'm often taken seriously, not always. But, it's that...
What's that quote from Perks of Being a Wallflower? We all accept the love we think we deserve. Yeah. And I think about it a lot, because it's not... It starts with, I can't claim to be the biggest RuPaul fan in the world, but the way they open that show or end the show, I'm showing that I really haven't seen the show. But if you can't love yourself, then how the hell are you going to love anybody else? It's a real, we have to think that not only about ourselves, but also about the people who we see as oppressing us or who are oppressing us. It's a self-love that's lacking if someone is treating you less than. It's their own insecurity. It's their own, and look, it's a constant negotiation. I was having, feeling very vomitous before this live stream started, because I was saying to Eimear, you interview real people, real heroes doing really cool stuff. What in God's name am I going to say to these people? What am I? What purpose do I have being on there other than that you can't get me to shut up? And but I think it's it's still. But even though I'm very terrified to do something like this and come on and talk as if I know anything, it doesn't mean I love myself any less. Because I think I'm spectacular, but I also sometimes at work at the Lunasa ritual in the beginning, before I got to feel that diamond energy, I felt like I always feel like I'm a half step away from people figuring it out, that I'm useless, that I'm a dilettante who and while simultaneously being an absolute megalomaniac. So I feel like I have everybody has this negotiation, and it goes up and down. Sometimes I'm feeling really confident and in charge of myself. Other times I feel like, oh God, please no one look at me, because you're going to see right through my and it's
welcome to the club.
Yeah. So the idea of thinking that anyone has it together is wrong. None of us do. The most confident person looks in the mirror, I would say at least 3 or 4 times a week, and says, who the fuck do you think you are? At themselves. It's part of it. But I think that what David said, loving yourself is the first step to anything, and it's not that in terms of progress. That is not linear. That loops around and circles back, and you're never really sure if you do. But finding that base of love for yourself is really important in your actions, or in your relationship to other people. And like Eimear said, it's not about radiate good energy and nothing bad will happen to you, because I think that the entirety of Gaza would be able to disprove that very quickly. That sometimes horrific things happen to you regardless of how strong you are and how good you are and how many gardens you plant. I think about that guy all the time who was planting every day. He would plant new seeds, and it was his way of saying, the more the bombs fall, I'm going to put more seeds to show that we can grow beauty. And he died in a strike. And I think about
Oh.
him all the time of all of that good just wiped off the map. Not just him, his entire family wiped off the map. And I think that for all of us, regardless of our familial situations, regardless of how we view ourselves or how we view society, it is our civic duty. It's an imperative that we all live for that Gazan boy planting seeds, smiling every day in the face of bombs. And I don't like relativizing, like, oh, they have real problems and our problems are. That's very not my game, because we all have our boulders to push up the mountain. But I think that it's important that we remember that this love that we're hoping that the world feels, the only way forward is to embody it ourselves. And boy, is that challenging. It's work to be happy. It's a habit. It's a constant negotiation to love yourself, to be happy, to radiate love, to have compassion for people who you don't see any compassion in them. It's easy to have compassion when someone radiates it. It's like a mirror bouncing light back and forth. But when someone doesn't happen, it feels like, why the hell am I wasting all this love and understanding and empathy on you, you prick? But what's the
We still have
alternative?
to do it. And yeah, it's about finding it in ourselves and then radiating it out. And I've had that in experiences, just doing it, and then I find people are open. But but it's about remembering to be able to do that. Karis, who says, I'm planning on doing a solar ritual to help me be kind to myself soon. I wish you all the best with that. And I think that really, really important. And then Blake says, if more people would put the work for self-growth that your mother has, James, we'd all be better off.
Here.
Just even you're talking about her and she doesn't know. And even that, it's like, oh my God, that's an amazing woman. And you're talking about that young Palestinian planting the trees. Okay, he's been wiped out, but not a story, because we're talking about it now. And it's about always, continuing to plant seeds. Just not. Well, I'm not in a position where I need to give up. So I haven't been pushed to it yet. But so I'm hoping I can continue to persist, not give up. You know, when it's like you say, I can't take any more and I'm out. But so I haven't reached that point where I've been challenged enough to get to that point. So I'm hoping that we can keep going. And Liz says, you can kill a man, but you can't destroy an idea. Oh, absolutely.
Here.
And it's
about...
And I
think
go on.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, you go on.
I was just going to say, I think that it, as someone who has given up, hit a wall, and thought I'm out so many times, the nice thing is that I'm still here. Like you every time you think you can't do something, that's I think about it every time on my birthday. I really am so uncomfortable on my birthdays because I'm very uncomfortable with being paid attention to. Says me, who's on a live stream in the middle of the night with I cannot express my discomfort at being paid attention to unless it's in a setting where I feel like I've done something to deserve. So my birthday is an absolute disaster for me. Every year I panic, and then I think, I'm a big boy, I'm going to have a party because that's what people do, and I'm an adult, and I'm going to have, and then I cancel it every day, every year, like clockwork. The day before, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I have a cut on my foot, and my shoe is filling up with blood, all my teeth fell out, and I can't have the party. I will think of anything. But every year on my birthday, I go through like a reel in my head of all the times I thought, this is it, this is the end of me, I can't do this, I can't survive this, I can't I'm never gonna, whatever the ... follows into. And I go through all of those in my head to think, I'm still here. I'm like the virus you can't get rid of. And I think that it's such a it's such a powerful thing to see ourselves evolve, to see my mom do it, because she's outside of me. She's another person. To see her grow like this, it's such a magical operation to see it in another person. But then on my birthday, in silence, in my room that I'm hiding from everyone in, when I look at myself and my evolution over the years, and I think about that kid in the library, terrified and hiding, and how all of those, this is going to be my last day because I'm going to get murdered. But instead, I read about Lou, and I read about him knocking on the door saying, "Hey, do you have one of these? Do you have one of these? Well, how about, do you have someone who's all of these?" And thinking of oh, what a god, and living through Lou and his stories, and feeling so connected to this other place, and then how that would get me through the next day. And then the next day I would go in and I would read about Bernadette Devlin in the Ireland section, and I would read about being shot multiple times and standing up and fighting again, and going into the multimedia section downstairs where they have old reels, and watching her talking so calmly, taking the tear gas out of someone's eyes, who's writhing in pain, and she doesn't flinch. And I think, God, that strength. What a woman. And then to think of all of the different me's that went from there to where I am now, where now it's really difficult to offend me. It's really difficult to upset me. And
how freeing that is. How freeing that is to hear people and not take it on. And it's beautiful. We're going to have to come to the end of our time, but you had the No King's March Day protest in the US, and just one of our members, she went wherever she was in her place where she lives in the US, and she went as a peace person. She was marching, and I think the majority of those marches were all peaceful, no arrests, no, am I right? No, amazing. But that people, going there with an intention, this is bringing peace in my heart. And she's been on a number of protests, and they've been peaceful because that's what she's doing. And she's talking to angry people, but she is really living the peace prayer,
Yeah.
And she's been able to bring people around. And I think it's not easy, but I think. Oh, Liz says one person arrested for wearing a penis costume. That's as far as I know.
This violent left-wing radical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's about coming back to ourselves and trying to love ourselves. I mean, like Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, and you can't be loving your neighbor if you can't love yourself. It's about starting with, and I think Buddhism says the same. It comes back to the self. And this isn't about
Jesus,
individualism.
the Buddha, and RuPaul all agree.
They can't all be wrong then, three of them. And it's not about being selfish and self-centered. I get criticized for that. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. It always comes, because even, if you were doing the worst of the world, like a sniper still has to start with their still center. Because no matter what you do, if you come from a place of anger, you're going to lose it. So if you want to persuade somebody to change their mind or of your position, you start from a place of love. You're more likely to get it than you're pointing a gun at them. Cara says, I love the frog costumes. I really want a Frog Brigade t-shirt. Well, hopefully you'll get one. So
I knew frogs would have their moment.
And of course, that's lost on me. But anyway, the cultural significance of it. But I want to say thank you so much. Oh my God, it's after 10 o'clock. We started because the shenanigans that the frog costumes, the protesters were. Thank you, Cara. So, and Maeve says, the Dalai Lama says, if there was one religion, let it be kindness to self first. Look at it, it's a no-brainer. So this has been so lovely, and I apologize for the shenanigans earlier with StreamYard, whatever was happening with my computer. I don't know. it was working earlier today. So I just wanted to thank you, James. It's been such a wonderful chat. I had no idea where this was going to go. So really, really enjoyed it. And
Guru Mahagat, I had the time of
and
my life.
there've been loads of comments, long comments. People have been talking in the chat that I haven't been able to look at, but and also people supporting each other, which is really, really nice because of something that we said. Figure something for somebody, and then they make some comments on it, which is really lovely. So I'll let you say goodnight, and then I'll let you say goodnight to everybody, and I'll send you to the green room then.
Well, good night, everybody. That's that's showbiz, baby. I've had the time of my life. Thank you, everybody, for being so nice to me. I might have a little cry now because I'm terrified of being here. Thank you very much. It was really nice to see everybody's comments. It was this is what I love Obad. It's everybody's so nice. It's such a nice thing. So good luck to everybody in your goings on. Good luck with your families and all of your goings on. And good luck, Ireland, tomorrow. No pressure, but don't fuck this up. And yeah, Guru Mahagat, Slán Gafal, etc.
It's okay. So you don't go. You just go back to the green room, and I'll go into in a minute. Thank you.
I'll be waiting in the waiting room.
Okay. So thank you all for joining me, and for your lovely comments, etc. And I didn't get to answer all of them, but I was just so taken up with our conversation with James. So thank you all as usual. Anyway, I'll be back next week for another interesting conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovids, and Druids. And then we're coming. Well, we are October 23rd. So next week we'll be heading into Samhain. And until then, Slán go Fóill, and enjoy the rest of your day. Good morning, good night, good evening, good afternoon, or if you're watching a recording of this. So in the meantime, be well, Slán go Fóill.